Welcome, everyone. So excited to have you join us here this evening. I'm very excited to join us for our third panel discussion in the Women's Virtual Roundtable series, Her Story, Her Power, Health, Wellness, and Nutrition for Women. My name is Faith Murphy, and as a volunteer for the Niles Foundation, I will be your moderator today. Today, we are actually going to hear from two amazing women who are making a difference in our communities and changing the way that women approach nutrition, movement, and mindfulness. And as we all know, these are kind of the building blocks to all things for strong minds, strong bodies. So, for those who are new here today, the Niles Foundation is a nonprofit founded to build equity and equality for all. Our focus is on women, youth education, and sustainable projects, and we empower our citizens, especially those in low, moderate income who are underserved and underrepresented. Every month throughout the rest of 2021, we'll be bringing together speakers, artists, entrepreneurs, and anyone else who represents us here today. And this series is going to continue to cover topics that are important to women. But the whole purpose of all these roundtables is to educate, empower, and inspire. So, as we've done previously, we're going to spend some time with our panelists asking them some health and wellness questions. If you have questions over here in the little live chat, just go ahead and type your question in. Hopefully, we're going to have time for some questions at the end. Also, when we get through to the end, usually we have something special, and today we have an extra special surprise for all of you. We're going to practice a little bit what we're talking about, and Dr. Sampson is going to take us through a 5 minutes breathwork exercise. The power of taking a few minutes to breathe intentionally will do wonders if you are ever anxious in an uncomfortable situation. All right, so with that, we're going to get started. Our first panelist today is Dr. Ashley Sampson, who is an associate professor at the Department of Kinesiology at Cal State Northridge, where she teaches courses on sports psychology and sports sociology, and she also conducts research on athletes. She was officially hired by Matador Athletics as the sports psychology consultant for student athletes in the fall of 2014. Dr. Sampson works with individual student athletes, teams, and coaches on a variety of topics, including competition anxiety, confidence building, team cohesion, communications, and more. She received her doctorate from the Louisiana State University, go Tigers, and completed her dissertation on self-perceptions of distance runners, which is a line of research that she continues today. In addition, Dr. Sampson also conducts research in the areas of motivation, fear of failure, mental toughness, and women in sports issues. She has published in internationally and nationally recognized scientific journals and has been interviewed for both television and radio stories about her work. She also has a private practice outside of CSUN in which she consults with athletes for a variety of sports backgrounds and levels. Dr. Sampson is a certified consultant through the Association for Applied Sports Psychology and was recently named to the United States Olympic Committee for Sports Psychology and Mental Training Registry. In her spare time, Dr. Sampson also enjoys running ultramarathons, teaching yoga, and competing in the equestrian sport of 3-day eventing. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here this evening.
Excellent. I'm so excited to have you. Next up, we have Christine Hedrick, who is a certified empowered well-being coach, a certified health and nutrition coach, a certified life and transformation coach, personal trainer, fitness instructor, and mom of 2 littles. She has a true passion for all things health and wellness. Her mission is to empower as many people as she can to be their healthiest and happiest selves. Through one-on-one coaching, group coaching, workshops, webinars, and classes, she's helped hundreds of people take charge of their lives, improve their relationships with food and exercise, and create sustainable, life-changing, healthy habits. Welcome, Christine.
Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. This is such an honor, and I'm excited to help educate, empower, inspire our audience tonight. So thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. First of all, I love this topic, so I'm super excited. Hopefully everyone here tonight is going to enjoy this too. So we're going to kind of get right into it, because I think one of the first things, I've given everyone their bio, but I also think it's always more fun for people to hear it a little bit more in your own words. So Ashley, we're going to start with you. You know, what I would love to hear a little bit more about is, how did you pursue your career within health and wellness?
Yes, thank you. So it's interesting because, and this is something that I talk about a lot when I work with my students at the university, when they're coming to me for advisement and thinking about grad school or what, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I'm like, that's fine. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I changed my major 4 times when I was an undergrad, much to my parents' dismay. And, I originally was on the path for traditional psychology. I thought that I wanted to be more of a traditional therapist. When you think about that, I was sort of going down the road of clinical psychology. I was a college athlete and have always been really active and outdoors and playing sports. And, I got introduced to the topic of sports psychology. And so for me, it sort of blew my mind that I could combine 2 things that I was really passionate about. And so I said, okay, well, I've got to go to grad school anyway. So why don't I try this sports psych thing and see what it is? And ended up falling in love with it. And then along the way, I also got the opportunity to be a teaching assistant and realized that I also had a passion for teaching. And so then that really got me thinking about academia. And so then that's what led me to go on and pursue my doctorate, so that I could do the applied work and I could also be in academia as well. And so, in my career, in my job, I feel like I get the best of both worlds. I get to work with these amazing college athletes on all things mental related to being an athlete. But what's really interesting is that a lot of the times the things that we talk about aren't even necessarily about improving their free throws or, getting a faster start out of the blocks. It's about life and wellness and just, at that age of being a college student and figuring out, who do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? And I really enjoy that process. And so for me, it's just so rewarding to get to do something I'm passionate about, but that also is helping other people and impacting our community and hopefully having a positive change there.
Oh, I love. Christine, how about yourself?
Yes. Okay. So people look at me today and they're like, okay, she's super healthy. She's probably been healthy her whole life. And that's actually far from the truth. If you knew me 10 or 20 years ago, you probably would not think we're the same person. But I was a kid of the 80s. I grew up on fast food and junk food and soda. I drank soda like it was water. I have not touched soda in so long, right? And I just didn't know better as a kid, right? Growing up, and my family didn't know better. It wasn't until when I was an adult in college, I decided, you know what? I think I want to take a nutrition course. So I took a nutrition course, and one of the requirements was for us to do a body analysis and then do a report and actually eat better and do a whole report on it. And it was terrifying going in, and the nurse was telling me, you need to get healthier. And I was like, what? Because I had no idea. That same year, though, in college, this was really scary. My dad had a heart attack, and thank goodness I was there when it happened. It was in the middle of the night. He woke me up and he said, Christine, I think I'm having a heart attack. Of course, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I called 911. He's like, let's drive there. So I got in the car. I ran every single red light, got there in one place. I debunked the myth that Asian women are bad drivers, by the way. We got there safely. The doctors took him in and performed open heart surgery. I remember the doctor coming out and telling me, Christine, what you did was so courageous. If you did not do that, he would probably not be here today. And to think that I would have lost my dad in that moment is just heartbreaking, but he's alive and well. But after that, the doctor said, you need to eat better. You need to start working out. And patients hear this all the time from doctors. And a lot of times, we all know what we should be doing, but we just don't know how to do it, how to do healthy habit change. We don't have that support and that accountability, right? So I was like, I'm going to do this with him. First of all, I had to do it for my class, right? And better support for him I want my dad to be healthy. So I started, working out. I started taking fitness classes, and then I ended up becoming a fitness instructor and a personal trainer, which was totally out of my realm. I was the shy person. I probably would have never been in front of a class and never do a webinar like this. But it shows that when you take care of yourself and you eat healthy, your energy goes up and you start doing more things and your potential rises. Yes. So I loved how I was feeling and I wanted to share this with more people. So I ended up studying all about health and wellness. I went into sports med for a little bit, and then I went to learn more about habit change and studied like motivational interviewing and appreciative inquiry. And then I just, this became like my passion of being able to help people create healthy habits, because I know how much health changed my life and my dad's life and all my clients. So that's where I am.
First of all, I love both these stories. I would even say my own like health and wellness journey. I actually had to go and have back surgery. I fly a ton for work, and for like pre-pandemic, I would do 100,000 miles a year without even batting an eyelash. And I ended up doing my L4, L5, S1 disc. Went and got super herniated, and it's really super painful. And I was 31 years old when I did it the first time. And then I basically was told that if I don't get surgery, because it had gone out so far that it was now pushing on my saddleback nerve, they basically were like, if you don't figure out how to bring in some health and wellness into your day to day, you won't be able to walk anymore. Oh. And that was kind of like a totally mind-blowing experience for me. So here I am, 37 years old, and I'm having like a relatively major back surgery.
Wow.
So it's been super challenging, and I think I'm going to speak for a lot of people. Like here I am, pre-world, up and about, working out, does everything. We come into the pandemic and we're stuck at home. So what I want to ask is the kind of our first question to get us started is, really, what have you been hearing are the biggest challenges for women in regards to health and wellness during the pandemic? And Ashley, why don't we start with you?
Sure, absolutely. I think two things, and they're kind of related, but also can be separate things. I think one, and I think this is for all of us, I can speak that we all have been completely taken out of our routines. And, humans like routine, not to get too deep into the psychology side of it, but I'm sure I'm going to go there a bunch tonight. Our primitive wiring, right, is based on routines, because routine equals safety. And so when we get our routine sort of taken away from us, that can sort of throw everything on its head. And then I think is sort of another related component that I've heard about a lot, and that myself I have experienced as well, and I've had to be very, very intentional about things, is that our normal sort of boundaries around the different parts of our lives are gone. Hopefully with vaccinations, and we're starting to slowly make the road back to normal, if you will. I think, that some of that might come back, but I think that's also, the boundaries around work time, family time, health and wellness time, maybe working out time, I should say, it's all just been taken away, and so I think that also has been hard because, again, those boundaries and those routines help us sort of stay in those habits, and this has, I think, been an opportunity for me. Again, I can speak for myself to be able to really try to practice a lot of mindfulness that I know we'll talk about later, to be more intentional in keeping some of those boundaries, even if they aren't really necessarily existing in the normal way anymore, but set some boundaries. So that's really been one of the big things that I've noticed, in talking to the women in my community and in my work and sort of in my life.
Oh, there we are. Now we're all back. Yes. Christine, I'm sure, like, even in your own practice, so give us what are the big ones you're hearing?
I've talked to so many people. One is weight gain. A lot of people have gained weight during the quarantine. Like, I had one client, she named her testimonial to me, "No More Quarantine Belly." Was the title of her testimonial. Alcohol. I've had a lot of people dealing with alcohol where it's 5 o'clock and that's now their new routine to pour a glass, right? And they've gained that weight and they're like, okay, we need to do like a liver reset, right? Or just a step back. Social isolation has caused a lot of depression, affecting mental health, right? I've had a lot of also clients dealing with a lot of grief, deaths in the family. And then a lot of uncertainty, like people losing their jobs and just, having no security or financially, and just, a lot of uncertainty. So those are like my main ones that I've been hearing.
those resonate. I think almost everyone has experienced some version of one of those between the two of you, at least one.
It's
so,
not,
you know, yeah, at least. You know, so I think let's start with the nutrition side, because I think that is probably one of the slightly easier ones for us to start to control as we start to come back into normal world. You know, Christine, let's start with you on this.
Yeah.
You know, what are some of the basics that we should be thinking about when we're thinking about nutrition? And, you know, we have all those pieces to the pie, but when it really just comes back to, hey, I think I need to get a little bit healthier, besides saying, like, eat more vegetables.
Right. I know. I feel like that's like the common sense answer, right? It's like we just need to eat healthier, like more nutrient dense, which is true. I like to kind of assess where you are on like the continuum. If you think of processed, packaged, refined foods, right? Manufactured. And then on this side is like the whole foods, organic, like food in its natural element, not like the farm raised fish. It's like the wild caught. Wild caught just means like it sounds they're in the wild, how it's naturally supposed to be. Same thing with cows. Cows should be eating grass. Okay. So grass fed and then pastured chicken. So where are you on that continuum? And just slowly try to make the healthier option. If you can, I go for the more nutrient dense foods. And I mean, that seems like most comments is like people know what to do on that piece. But my two favorite tips that I want to share is I call this my magic plate. You can call this Christine's magic plate. Okay. And on this plate, yeah, everyone take notes, because this is, if you could
I'm like
do this, get ready. Yeah, your magic plate. So we actually need all the macronutrients. So the macronutrients are protein, fat, and carbohydrates. I know this, so there's like, oh, I should go really low carb, right? Or there's the keto diet. But if you're cutting out a lot of major food groups, or even like fruits and vegetables, for example, which are carbs, you're cutting out a lot of vitamins and minerals and nutrients. And we don't want to do that. However, there are healthier carbs, okay? But the magic plate consists of protein, fat, and fiber. So I always like to say fiber, okay? One of my clients, she says PFF, kind of like BFF, right? Your new BFF, now it's PFF. Protein, fat, and fiber. So protein, I'll give you some healthy examples. You can have some salmon, some turkey, some pastured eggs, right? Some grass-fed beef. And then fat, healthy fats like avocado, which are high in monounsaturated fatty acids, olive oil, like some grass-fed ghee, and then fiber, thinking like your broccoli, spinach, cauliflower, maybe some wild rice, buckwheat, like those kind of things, brown rice, quinoa. But we want fiber. The reason why those three things are on the magic plate, those three nutrients help slow down the absorption of sugar. If you guys have ever heard of the blood sugar roller coaster, when we eat foods that don't have protein, fat, or fiber, our blood sugar levels rise, they spike up really high, okay? And when our blood sugar levels spike up, what happens is that signals to our brain, this is an emergency, even though it's not an emergency, but it's an emergency. Let's do something about it. It signals to our pancreas to release insulin. Insulin is a storage hormone. We're going to take that take that sugar out of the bloodstream, store it in our cells. But insulin is so good at its job that when we're at the top of the blood sugar roller coaster, insulin does its job, and then we go down. But we go so down, we don't go to normal, we go below normal. And that's the crash, right? You guys feel that sugar high and then that crash. And at that crash, when you have no sugar in your bloodstream, what do you think you're craving? Sugar. More sugar. Exactly. To get you out of the toilet, you're like, I need more sugar. So if you ever notice, if you start your breakfast, if you start your day with OJ and cereal or waffle, I don't know how this happened. How did donuts and orange juice and cereal become breakfast foods? You start your day that way, all day long, you're going to be craving more sugar or caffeine, something to give you some energy. And then you're going to go up and down that blood sugar roller coaster. If you start your day with a blood sugar stabilizing meal with this magic plate, like a veggie omelet, right? Some eggs, some veggies, some avocado, you notice you're going to be like satiated and even keel. Okay. So that's one tip that I want to share today. And then one more that I think is going to make a really big impact, take notes, is chew your food. So many people don't chew their food. Most people inhale their food. Do you guys inhale? Do you know if you chew your food? How long does it take you to eat your meal? Do you?
I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Next time you eat your next meal, do me a favor, eat it like you normally would, but just put on your timer and just time how long it takes. I think the first time I did this, when I learned this in school, it took me 3 minutes. I was like, whoa, I ate my meal so fast. And like digestion, it's a lot of stress on our body. There's a lot of processes happening. Like first off, when we are thinking about food, even just cooking our food, that's going to start to have our body produce digestive enzymes, right? We start salivating. Just thinking about food and smelling it actually starts the digestion process. And when you put the food in your mouth, you have like the salivary enzymes breaking down the carbohydrates, but your teeth can break it down even more. And if we don't chew our food, it's going down it all the way into our stomach, and our stomach has to work really hard to break it up. Okay. The ability to extract energy from our food comes mostly from how much we're able to break it up. So if we can chew our food a lot before we swallow it, we're going to help the process of digestion so much more. You're going to be able to use it for energy as opposed to store it. Storing it means like storing it as fat on your body to use for later, which we don't want. So chew, chew, chew. If your mom ever told you like, chew your food, she was a wise woman. Those are my 2 favorite tips that I like to share with people.
I'm loving those.
Yeah, I have billions, obviously, for the sake of this webinar. I don't want to take up the whole hour.
And I just want to add, 2 things to just sort of think about from the psychological perspective. And first of all, I was writing notes. I got my PFF plate. I'm getting that ready. But I think also when we look at it from sort of the psychological perspective and how we think about food, I think so many of us can also get into the trap of like food as a reward, and like I'm working out so I can eat whatever I want, versus I'm eating so that I can do whatever I need to do throughout the day, and thinking of food as fuel versus food as a reward. When I was doing all of my studies on behavior change, of course, a lot of it was centered around nutrition and exercise and things like that. And so the way that we look at food, and the role that food plays in our lives. And that's not to say that we shouldn't enjoy food and enjoy like cooking and eating a delicious meal, but it's not like the sort of like that, like the hashtag treat yourself and all that stuff. Again,
yes, exactly.
There's always a place for it, but the idea of like food as fuel versus food as a reward. And I love what you were saying about the chewing piece, because a part of my mindfulness practice that I try to do is when I'm eating, I literally just eat. Versus
that's another one of my favorite tips. Just eat. Don't multitask when you're eating. And I also love, here, I'm going to add one more tip for you guys. I call it sensual eating. And what that means is you engage all of your senses. So notice the textures of the food, the smells, the colors, or your ambiance. When you do that, you are in a present state. You are turning on your parasympathetic nervous system, right? As you know, parasympathetic nervous system is optimal for digestion and for healing. It's the opposite of the stress response. And so being mindful, not just in mindful eating, but mindful throughout your day, is turning on that parasympathetic, which we need more of, you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great, so I think you guys said a couple things. And I think one of the pieces that I immediately say, like, okay, so if in the morning I have orange juice, and then, I'm going to go and maybe we can play out a couple like different scenarios, but I'm a mom. I have my littles that I have to go feed, and then I'm probably going into maybe just my couch to go work for the rest of the day because now I have to go to work. What would you recommend as kind of like, you have your kids, you have yourself. Do we look at those meals as the same? Should we be feeding ourselves the same that we're feeding our children? Because now, we're women in our 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s. Or is there a different diet that we should be looking at when it comes to like that morning to get us started off right?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say to make it easier on yourself, why not do the same foods?
Yes.
Right? Why not? Like this morning, I made eggs, some avocado, some tomatoes, a little bit of arugula. My toddler had that, and my 9-month-old, I gave him some scrambled eggs and avocado too. Like, why not? It makes it easier. And if it's a healthy meal, I want them to be eating the healthy meal. I have one client who, it's so funny, she eats really unhealthy, like junk food and everything, but she feeds her baby the cleanest stuff. And I'm like, she's feeding him like organic, grass fed. It's just crazy. Like she'll make meals for him. I'm like, why don't you just double or triple what you're making him and eat it too, instead of you eating the junk food? So why not eat the same thing? Make it easier on yourself.
I like that. Ashley, anything to add there?
No, I mean, I think, again, kind of coming from the psych perspective, any type of behavior change that we're trying to do, if it's easy, it's going to be more likely to stick, and absolutely, if, and I've heard the same thing, if people, like they make one meal for their family and then a whole separate meal for themselves, and why not have everyone eating the same healthy things? Because eventually you're going to get tired of doing that, right? So make it easy on yourself, because it's going to stick.
I love it. I think one of the things that we always hear about is all of these different diets, the keto diet, the paleo diet, the low carb diet. Like, is there a reason why we should be looking at those different diets for any, like, me as myself, do I say, oh, I just want to do the no carb diet, or should I be looking at somebody to help me truly understand what type of diet I should go on?
Yeah, that's a great question too. First off, I think there's not one perfect diet for everyone, right? There's this thing called bio-individuality, where there's the same, like, the number of perfect diets in the world as there are a number of people in this world. That means each person has like a specific diet for you. And it actually will change from time to time. Like, who you are now is completely different than who you were 10 years ago and what you should be eating. And so learning, to understand your body and pay attention to what it's needing and what it's craving, and like as far as energy levels and deficiencies, I think is so key. And then the term diet, research has shown that diets actually don't really work, right? They're more of like a Band-Aid. They're a quick fix. And research shows people tend to lose the 5 to 10 pounds in the first 6 months, but end up gaining it back and more. So being able to learn a healthy relationship to food and exercise, I think, is going to be more key. And like I mentioned, any diet that's not sustainable, kind of like Ashley was saying, if it's not easy and it's not like you're not more likely to do it all the time, it's going to be hard to keep up, right? So you want something that's sustainable. And then also, I want something that's more nutrient dense. Like if you're cutting out fruits and vegetables, if you're cutting out major food groups, I would kind of steer clear, because we want those vitamins, you want those nutrients.
Oh, I love. Okay. So we're going to move now to the next piece, which is now like motion is lotion, the longevity. Like I literally had a doctor tell me, he goes, motion is lotion. I was like, that's weird. Thanks. So we all know that body movement is the key to longevity. Ashley, what are some tips and tricks that we should be considering when we need to start incorporating that into our lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. I think two main things are principles that I, sort of try to stay connected to when I'm working with individuals. And so in my current job, I'm working with athletes. So getting them to be active isn't really much of a hurdle there. They're already being active. But prior to that, I actually was working in the corporate wellness world and doing behavior change counseling. And that was something that we worked on a lot with the individuals that I would work with, sort of nutrition changes, working with a dietitian, and then, coming to me talking about some of the more physical activity and other behavior changes. And specifically with physical activity, I think two of the big things are, one, what you're going to do most is what you enjoy. And so don't try to make yourself a runner if you hate running, or make yourself a yogi if you hate yoga. I think you have to find what you enjoy. I think also thinking of physical activity as a lifestyle versus a thing that I go do for 30 minutes a day, and trying to just be active throughout your day, and simple things like, parking in, a far away parking spot and walking those 2 extra minutes, like doing that all throughout the day. If you're running around doing errands, that adds up. Taking stairs, things like that. I think also having realistic expectations, and, while we're prioritizing physical activity and we want to get physical activity in every day, there might be days where we can't. And so being able to be kind with yourself, and be compassionate and patient with yourself, especially. Now, that's not to say just like letting yourself off the hook and being like, oh, well, what's 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, but being patient and kind with yourself, especially, as we've all gone through this pandemic. I think, there's been a lot of talk in sort of the research areas and the circles that I'm in about people being patient and kind with themselves, and realizing that maybe it was okay, because that's what you needed to do to cope, for a little bit. But now we get ourselves back on track and we be healthy and, get healthier, and we don't beat ourselves up about it. So I think too, again, going back just to summarize, because like Christine was saying, on all of these things, I could talk for like the next 4 hours.
I know. We're going to have to come on again.
Yeah, we need part 2. But so again, finding what you enjoy and doing that, right? And that's not to say don't be open to try things, but again, if you hate running, don't feel like you have to make yourself a runner. And like for me personally, I worked as a personal trainer all through college and grad school, but I hate being inside of a gym. For my own workouts, I go outside, and I don't care how hot or cold or whatever, I'd rather be outside, and so I know for me, like, that's what works. Other people want the air conditioning, they want the screens, they can watch the news while they're sitting on the exercise bike, or they want to go to the group X classes. And so find what resonates with you. And, there's some interesting work, related to like personality types and types of exercise that people might resonate more or less with. And so I think it's important to, again, like, I know I should do physical activity, but what do I personally actually enjoy doing? And thinking through that versus, going and doing what I think I should be doing or what everybody else tells me what to do, figuring out what I enjoy, and then having realistic expectations about, it fitting into your life, and knowing that each day is a journey,
Yeah. I actually kind of like, maybe we'll save it for like the resources, but I would love to know more about like, if this is the type of person you are, this is the type of exercise you should do. Like that to me, I'm like, oh, okay, someone help me. Because I think, that's always maybe sometimes it's just getting started. It's making that like that day that you say, tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for that walk around the block just before I start my afternoon or before I start my work day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just about the first step.
Yeah.
Along those lines, because I think there's probably also this next piece where we can get really excited and we can say like, I just want to get started. Like, let's take the Peloton as like an amazing example. All these people bought Pelotons during the pandemic. Like, how do we make sure that if we're going to go all in on something, that we are careful and that we don't end up doing like some sort of damage to our body because we got so in? So, and Christine, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah. So if you've never done anything before, first off, I do recommend reaching out to like a personal trainer or a fitness instructor and making sure you do have good form. Or if you're watching the video, if you can get someone hands-on to actually see your form, I recommend that. And obviously, if you can't afford that, reach out to your fittest friend. Who's your fit friend? And can you say, hey, can I work out with you? Or can you watch my form and get tips from them? Mm-hmm. And then listen to your body. Sometimes there is that fine line of pushing yourself too hard. And if you are feeling pain that is much like more exacerbated and longer than like normal muscle soreness, then you do want to get it checked out or rest. And oftentimes people think, oh, I shouldn't rest, I'm going to go backwards. But no, rest is key. It's not going backwards. It's actually going to help you show up the next day and perform better. Other pieces is also making sure we talked about fuel, right? Food as fuel. You need energy for your workout. So you don't want to go in completely depleted. You also need water. like hydration is key. Like a common thing is, especially if it's summertime, you know, and you're out, like you said, you like outdoor workouts, and without water, you can have a heat stroke. So hydrating properly, making sure you've eaten something to give you a little bit of energy, obviously not too early, not right before, depending on the person. Some people can eat right before, some people can't. You don't want to be throwing up your food during your workout. So that's what I would recommend. See if you can get someone to watch your form first, if possible.
Excellent. Ashley, anything to add to that one?
No, I would just second that. And that's exactly my first thought was to, you know, seek the help of a professional or someone who's really knowledgeable to help you. Because I think sometimes people can make the mistake of like they go in and they actually go too hard in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, and then they end up so sore they can't walk for a week. And then it's like they feel discouraged. And so it becomes this negative cycle when it really doesn't need to be. You know, if you have someone who has the knowledge to be able to help you get started on that journey.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. So then I had a couple questions. I'm like, I have a lot of questions actually here.
Bring it.
I'm gonna take two from the chat right now because they're really timely. So one of them's coming in and asking, you know, how do you deal with the withdrawal from those addictive foods, the flour, the sugar, the wheat, when you're trying to change your eating habits? So
yeah,
I'm going to leave that first one to you for Christine.
Yeah. So you would want to slowly cut back on those refined sugars and carbs, right? Like, for example, if you're putting a couple scoops of sugar in your coffee, like I'm not going to have you go cold turkey. Like maybe you half it, right? And then keep lowering down. The other piece is, like I mentioned, if you do my magic plate, I think it'll really help you, is going to slow down the absorption of sugar, not causing that spike so you don't have the cravings. So if you pair the food, not instead of just eating, like, for example, fruit juice is just the sugar from the fruit without the fiber. So fruit juice is going to cause more of a spike. Like, eat the whole fruit because you get the fiber with it too. And if even better, like if you have an apple, add a little bit of fat, like peanut butter or almond butter on it. And that's also going to help satiate you. Fat is super satiating and it's slowing down the insulin spike, and then the cravings will be lessened. So thinking of pairing your foods with some kind of protein or healthy fat, and making sure you have that fiber should help with the sugar cravings.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, Ashley, I'll go and send this one to you. How about daily stretching? I mean, I feel like, how important is that? How do we go around that one?
Yeah, it's very important. Definitely. You know, to kind of go back on what you were saying earlier with the whole motion is lotion, you know, I teach yoga as well. And so yoga, you know, and you know, yoga isn't just stretching, but a lot of people sort of equate that, you know, they're similar. And so the idea of just moving our bodies a little bit each day to kind of counteract, especially with, you know, we've all been working remotely for over a year, a lot of us, and we've got what I call the Zoom muscles built up. And so it's all of these sitting muscles. Our lower backs are tight, our shoulders are hunched, you know, our necks are strained. And so really trying to do things to kind of counteract that, and taking moments to roll your shoulders up and back, open your chest, right? Those kinds of things. And so I definitely think it's important to do daily stretching. Now, that being said, it doesn't have to be like 30 minutes of it every day. It could literally be 5 minutes. And even things that you can do while you're sitting there checking email, you can, you know, bring your neck to this side and bring your neck, you know, just be doing things while you're doing things that you're already doing. I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to incorporating any habit, is if you can sort of piggyback it onto things that are already part of your daily routine. I think that then helps it stick. Because if we're just trying to insert new things in, it can be really, really hard to make them stick. Not impossible. If you really want to make that change, you can. But, you know, again, in sort of the reality of our daily lives, most of our lives are already jam-packed. And so the idea of like adding something else into our lives can seem a little bit like, oh, okay, I know this is good for me, but like, where am I going to fit this in? I've got like 2 minutes between like 10 and 10:02, you p.m., after the kids have gone to bed and whatever. And so if we can sort of attach it to things that we're already doing, then that can be, a lot easier in terms of incorporating that into our daily lives.
Oh, it's a great, I think it's kind of how it speaks to starting to build those daily habits. And I feel like daily habits and motivation, they start to go hand in hand. But why don't we, it's a question that we already have, so this is probably a good time. How do you keep yourselves motivated? Is it for me personally, it's I could definitely feel the difference when I've gotten up every morning and I've done my meditation, I've done my journaling, and I've done my stretching and yoga, to the days that I don't. My whole day is off. It's just, without fail, my first meeting for the day is going to go terribly wrong, and it's going to set the rest of my day. So it makes it really easy. But for how else can we look at that as ways to build those daily habits?
Yeah, so habits are basically the actions we take on a daily basis, and we've created this routine. And our brain is like our neurons. We have habit loops in our brain, right? And I like to give the analogy of a jungle. And if you think of a jungle and a path from point A to B, and there's a clear road, that's kind of like your habit. And then when you're trying to create a new habit that you've never done before, it's you got to hack down the trees, a new pathway. And it's really hard. So it makes sense that you go back to your old habits, which you've been doing your whole life, even if they are self-destructive ones, right? So it's really key in if we can load up all the good feelings, for you, for example, you loaded up all those good feelings of how awesome your day is going to be. And that's why you choose to wake up early and do that. If someone, for example, loads up, oh, it feels so good to sleep in and just be cozy in my blanket, they're going to choose that over waking up early and getting a yoga or meditation or exercise or whatever it is. So if we can load up all the good feelings and connect that big why to that habit, you're more likely, I think, to be motivated to do it. So motivation, that word, I feel like motivation is fleeting. We got to connect the feelings and rewire your brain so that way you want to choose that. We always choose what's most pleasurable to us. That's human, right? We're not going to choose what is not pleasurable. We choose what's most pleasurable. So whatever activity that you want to be doing, that habit, how do we make that pleasurable? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Ashley, anything to add there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your jungle analogy, because I actually use the same thing when I'm talking about walking through tall grass. That's great, because it's easy, right? So I like your jungle one, though. That's great, because I think that also captures the struggle of making the new path better. And so I think when it comes to motivation, and this is sort of my wheelhouse, I do a lot of research in this area. And so I think it sort of comes down to two big things that are separate, but then also overlap. And so one of them, Christine already introduced, is this idea of what are your values? What do you value? What is important to you? And there's a lot of interesting work done in the behavior change world in terms of, making healthy behavior changes. But then there's also sort of a complementary line of research also within the idea of workplace behavior that comes from IO psychology. And it looks at our values, and are we living in a way that's aligned with our values? And what we tend to find, and this might not even be conscious for a lot of us, is that we tend to move towards things that we value and move away from things that we don't value. And we make decisions based on what we value. And so if we value our cozy bed and the feelings of sleeping in, right, more than we value the getting up and doing all the things that make us feel ready to tackle the day, right, then we're going to go towards what we value more. And thinking about, and so, Christine, when you were giving your story earlier, it was, for me, it was a perfect example of you all of a sudden realize the value of health, right? And then that motivated you to continue on the path that you're on now. And so I think that was a great example of it. I think, related to that, the second component is what is called self-efficacy, which is very similar to self-confidence. And it's this idea of, do I think I can be successful at this thing? right? And so I think it's this sort of combination of this little mini conversation that we have with ourselves. And again, a lot of times this is sort of subconsciously happening, but it's, do I value this, and do I think I can be successful at this thing, right? And so I think that's where we see a lot sometimes of how these two components can interplay, is like when it comes to exercise, because I think everyone will agree that exercise is good for us. We know that it's valuable to our lives, but not everybody feels high enough self-efficacy to be able to take that first step. Because it's like, well, do I think I can be successful? Oh, well, I don't know. I've never been an active person. Maybe there's that. Maybe I'm intimidated about going to the gym and feeling weird or stupid because I don't know what I'm doing. Those kinds of things. And so I think it's this interesting combination of what do I value, what's important to me, and then do I feel like I can be successful in this? And self-efficacy specifically, again, I'll try really hard not to like go off on a lecture here. This is actually where I do most of my research, and I published a bunch on self-efficacy. My dissertation work was on this. And so I love
this topic. I love this topic. You're just speaking my language, self-efficacy.
Right, yeah. And so what's interesting is that we know that, like, when we look at all the different things that impact whether someone's going to engage in a new behavior or not, self-efficacy comes out across the board, whether it's health behaviors, nutrition, preventative care behaviors, exercise, and even performance in the athletic world, which is, where I go with it a lot. We know that self-efficacy comes out as one of the strongest predictors of if someone is going to partake in a behavior, if someone's going to make a behavior change and they're gonna go through with it. Self-efficacy really tends to pop out as one of the big things. And because whenever somebody's presented with, let's say, a challenge, right? Like, let's start going to a Pilates class or a yoga class, or let's get that Peloton and let's start, riding in the morning with Julie, right? The first question that we tend to ask ourselves, and again, this usually isn't even conscious, but it's, can I do that?
Do it.
Can I be successful? Right. I don't know. Yeah. And if the answer is yes, or we think we can learn to be good at it, right? We don't have to be good at it right now. That's also a caveat. Like, it's not like I'm expecting to go out and be like Peloton champion tomorrow, but like, could I learn, right? Could I get good at it? And if the answer is yes, then we're going to move towards that. Because again, going back to what Christine was saying, that is psychologically pleasurable. Learning new things, feeling successful, that feels good to us. But if the answer is no, like, I don't think I could ever be good at that, even if I tried, then we're going to naturally move away from that. And so really thinking about how can we increase self-efficacy, which, I mean, there's a number of ways we can do that, and I won't go into all of that this evening. But
can you give us a tip? Can you give us like one or two? Because I think we have a question about like, how do we try to carve out time for self-development, which I think is probably these two kind of are going to go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when we look at what, plays into our perceptions of self-efficacy. So when I ask myself, I can be successful, and I say, oh yeah, I can go do that. What information am I using to make that judgment about myself, right? And so, there's sort of 5 main areas. And so the first one is we look at our past performances, right? Like, have I been successful in the past? Excuse me. And if the answer is yes, then we're like, okay, I did it before, I can do it again. Even if I haven't done that specific thing, if I've done something similar, right?
Right.
Social persuasion, which is this idea of people around us, right? And this is why it's so important to be really mindful of who you have in your circle. When we think about, like, as women with our tribes, like, it's very important to be very mindful of who we have in our tribe, because we want people to be encouraging us to take these risks and step out of our comfort zones and engage in these different behaviors or decisions or pathways that are going to help sort of bring us to our best self, if you will, for lack of a less cheesy way to say that. So we've got, past performances, we've got, social persuasion, and this is sort of the scientific terms of it, but basically it's encouragement, right? Or on the flip side, discouragement. And so that's why it's always really important to pay attention to who's in our circle.
Agree.
The other one, or the third one I should say, is vicarious experience or modeling. And so this is why, seeing people who are like us accomplishing their goals can be really helpful. We can watch a video and be like, okay, well, if she can do it, I can do it, right? And so then again, going back to this idea of why it's so important to encourage each other and share our stories, because we don't know who we're inspiring. And then we look at our moods. If we're in a bad mood, we're naturally not going to want to be getting out of our comfort zone. We're like, no, I don't want to do anything. So paying attention to our moods and also keeping that in mind when I'm going to try something new. Maybe I don't want to do it after I've had a really stressful day because that might sort of taint the experience a little bit. And then also, when it comes to on the sort of more physical side, physically, how are we feeling, right? And so maybe I, set out to go run 5 miles, but, I had a long day. It was stressful. I'm feeling a little bit tired. I didn't sleep well. So I really pay attention and say, okay, I'm not feeling very confident about that, but maybe I'm going to go to a yoga class instead because I'm going to listen to my body, as Christine was saying earlier. And so really paying attention to those things. And those can all help to increase our self-efficacy when it comes to those behaviors. But at the end of the day, I think also, we have to value it too, and so getting in touch with what really aligns with our values. And again, that also goes back to what I said earlier with, the activity that you're going to do the most is the one that you enjoy.
Yeah. I love that. And Christine, I'm sure you probably hear this a little bit also is, hey, I'm super busy. How do I do this? Like, how do I make time for this? So do you have any tips and tricks there?
Yes, it's so interesting. So with motivation also, I feel like exercise is like the best example, right? Yeah. But oftentimes the reason why people don't start the exercise program is a perceived lack of time, that they don't think they have enough time, that they think it has to be an hour, or it's, that all or nothing mentality, which is not serving you, right? And like Ashley was saying, if you just park your car further along or you take the stairs, everything adds up. So finding like those little pockets, or like she was saying, maybe you're doing your stretches while you're at your doing your Zoom, right? We can be doing some like multitasking some things if you can't find the time, right? And then the other piece, like Ashley was mentioning, is what do you value? So if something is a priority to you, right? A priority, you will find time to get that done. So when something is a priority and I put it in my calendar, for example, let's say I'm studying, and it's there and it comes on and I'm pushing it to the side, I like to tell myself, this is not a priority right now. And if it's not, and I really feel that, I'm going to push it to the side. But if I'm saying that it doesn't feel good, no, this is a priority, I'm going to find time to make it. So aligning that activity, I think the question was like, how do you provide time? What was it for self?
How do you find the time to do it?
Yeah, for self-development. Like if you're aligning your values, like you really care about your personal growth, you're going to find time for that, right? It's just a matter of priorities at that point.
I love that because there was I actually read that somewhere. It's just like it's not that you're lacking time. It's just not a priority for you today.
Yes.
And I am go ahead. No, go.
I was going to say another piece is I feel that oftentimes people don't want to carve time for themselves because they're giving so much to other people, right? And there's this misconception that taking care of myself is selfish, which is opposite, right? It's actually selfless. I want to give this reframe to everyone watching, because when you take care of you, you end up becoming a better version of you for everyone around you, right? Like I'm a mom, so I know when I work out, my husband gets the happier me, my kids get the energized me, and they know it too. My husband will say, go work out, honey, right? So self-care is so important. It's not selfish, you guys. So find time for it, and you're not being selfish for doing it.
I'm going to go and say it. I schedule it on my calendar. I mean, I have one of these calendars, and it's crazy. And it is, I literally will go and schedule 15 minutes. I'll schedule 30 minutes, and it's just 30 minutes in the morning. I'm also one of those people, I feed my dogs, and I stretch when I feed my dogs.
Yeah.
Like, it's just same thing when I'm like cooking. I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of like lifting my legs, lifting my arms, like super. It just becomes like I just feel like you got to move a little bit nowadays.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right.
And also one thing to add to the perceived lack of time, which was a real eye opener for me, is spend a few days at the end of the day, look at your screen time on your phone.
Oh my God.
And then you're like, wow, I had 5 hours to scroll on Instagram, but I didn't have 30 minutes.
Yes, that is something my last client just said. She's like, I make up excuses. You know, I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time to this. And then I go on my phone and I scroll for 2 hours on Instagram or TikTok. And I'm like, so you do have time to meal prep.
Yep. Or just watch those IG reels and learn how to do those dances. I feel like that's the best way to do the two of them together now. Ladies, this has been phenomenal. I think we've answered a bunch of our questions. We're coming up to the time. So what I do want to do, we're going to go a little over because I actually really am excited for Ashley to bring us through a breathwork exercise because I think it's like the perfect way to end this. Like, we've given everybody a ton of information. Let's sit back for 2 seconds. So Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what is breathwork? Why is it so good for us to incorporate into like 5 minutes of our day? And then after that, we will say goodbye and thank everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for this opportunity. So yeah, breathwork is probably one of the easiest and really most impactful things that we can do in terms of really sort of starting our day off, or even just throughout our day, incorporating some of those wellness practices. And, you know, when I was doing my yoga training, I knew that breathing was important, but we actually, during my training, spent an entire day doing breath work. And I was like, what are we just going to sit around and breathe for a day? Like, we all know how to breathe. We're alive, right? And so, but then I realized that I didn't really know much about breathing at all. And what's interesting is that a lot of us tend to be actually breathing incorrectly, which is really interesting. And why this is important is because as we go throughout our days and as we're going through various situations that sort of arouse and excite and maybe stress us out, right? We're going through our daily fluctuations of emotions. The first thing that happens when we go into sort of the stress response, and so as Christine was talking about earlier, the parasympathetic nervous system is the one that we really want to be working for us, because that's the one with relaxation, with digestion, with helping our body to function normally and as it should. But a lot of times we tend to live our daily routines in this state of what we call, you know, fight or flight. And the sympathetic nervous system is kicking off. And that's telling our body, like, panic, panic, we have a situation. And so it's like revving everything up. And our body's like, whoa, whoa, like we need to relax, right? For us to be able to function the right way. And so breathing is one of the quickest ways for us to be able to return back to that more parasympathetic space. And there's been some really cool research that, you know, talks about, and again, I won't go like too off into this because I know we only have a couple minutes, but, you know, when we have people sort of in that like very aroused, you know, agitated, anxious state, right, where our heart rate is up, our blood pressure's up, our temperature's up, everything in our body is saying like, go, 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 right? If we engage in as little as 2 minutes of deep breathing, everything starts to slow back down and our body starts to return to that nice parasympathetic, resting, you know, better functioning space, if you will, right? So it's not like we even need to sit around for 30 minutes and breathe. You know, 5 minutes is really all you need. And this, again, something you can be doing while you're cooking, while you're sitting in a Zoom meeting, while you're sitting in traffic, when we have to start going back into the office again. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of that. And I'm going to kind of talk you through a couple different things so that you can experience it. And so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and find yourself sort of sitting up a little bit more straight, feeling your sit bones underneath you. And if you want to take your shoulders and just roll them up, back, and down. And then we're just going to let our hands sort of sit, you know, palm up on the desk, on your lap, whatever's comfortable. Just a nice open and relaxed type of posture here. And actually, I'm going to invite everybody, so we're not sort of feeling maybe weird about doing this. We can all close our eyes. I'll close my eyes too. And we're going to take our right hand and just place it on our belly so we can sort of just feel what's happening with our belly. And we're just going to start off with just some nice deep belly breathing is what I like to call it, or some people call it diaphragmatic breathing. And as we're inhaling, you want to imagine that your belly is a balloon. And so your belly is sort of pushing out and pushing against your hand. And then as you're exhaling, it's sort of dropping back towards your spine. And so the reason that this belly breathing is so important, so go ahead and continue with this sensation. So inhaling, sort of pressing our belly out, and exhaling, allowing it to drop back towards our spine. So go ahead and continue to do that. And I'm just going to talk us through a little bit why this is so important. Because a lot of times when we're breathing, we tend to breathe through our chest. And when people say take a deep breath, usually our chest tends to rise and our stomach sort of sucks in. And that's what we think of as a deep breath. But when we think about breathing just into our chest, if you think about where our anatomy is, our lungs actually go all the way down, right, to our ribs, all the way down to the bottom of our ribs. And so if we're breathing just through our chest, we're only actually breathing through half of our lungs, right? So we're not even getting the full capacity there. And then, you know, if we're not breathing all the way through the bottom of our lungs, we're not getting as much oxygen exchanged. And that's sort of continually keeping our body in that fight or flight mode, because it's like, oh, we're not getting enough oxygen. We're starting to panic, right? And that's going to sort of keep us in that state. And so this deep belly breathing is really one of the quickest and easiest ways to sort of bring ourselves back down. And again, while we're sitting in traffic, this can be good. While we're sitting in a Zoom meeting, this can be good. While we're cooking, right? Just paying attention to, am I breathing in all the way to my belly, and am I breathing out all the way from my belly, right? And then another one that I'll introduce to you that's also a really, really neat technique. And this is used actually a lot with special forces and Navy SEALs who go in and do all kinds of really cool things where they're in these super high stress situations and they've got to stay calm because there's some big consequences if they don't. It's called square breathing. And so essentially what it is you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4. So I almost imagine this square. So it's like I'm breathing in for a count of 4. I hold for a count of 4. Exhale 4, hold 4. So it's in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, right? And you can almost imagine like a little, little line on paper drawing this little square. And the visual can also be helpful too if you find yourself like in kind of a stressful situation and you want to like, okay, I got to calm myself down, right? And just telling yourself to calm down doesn't work, because if it did, we'd all be in much better places, right? We have to actually do something about it. And so the breathing, the square breathing, and also visualizing the square while you're doing it sort of is twofold, because one, the breathing is sort of taking care of the physiological response to the stressor, right? It's helping to tell our body, you're okay, let's bring it back down. But then the actual imagining of like the little square line being drawn over and over, that also then takes care of the cognitive piece, because it causes our brain to have to shift away from maybe what are those worrisome thoughts to let's just focus on drawing a little square here, draw a little square, and your brain is going to draw the little square and move a little bit away from whatever those scary or anxious thoughts are. And so if that's 2 things you could take away for breath work, is belly breathing and square breath. Those are 2 great things that you can do. Again, you can do those anytime, anywhere. Nobody knows. We're all breathing all the time anyway. So do it.
Free.
Just breathe. Just breathe. Oh, Ashley, thank you so much. Christine, thank you so much. This has literally been amazing. I think we got tons of tips. I have tons of notes. We'll probably go and post some of them throughout the next couple of weeks on our Instagram pages, on the TNF Instagram page. So if anybody hasn't followed it, please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, we have another series coming up in July 14th. We're going to continue with our mental health and our physical health. Next month, we're going to go and talk more about balancing our careers, balancing family, and what does it really look like as we're coming back from this pandemic and we start to reemerge ourselves back into life. So everyone, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining us. Also, if anybody is interested in coming and trying to be a volunteer with the Niles Foundation, if you go to the nilesfoundation.org, there is a little tab up there for volunteers. Click on it. We're always looking for more volunteers. We have a ton of amazing things that are coming up through the summer, and they're coming into the fall, especially now that the world is opening back up. We get to see each other again. So everyone, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.